Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the BISP Podcast. Last time we were joined by Jacqui Brelsford, a subject selection advisor and counsellor at our school, and we talked about the subject selection process in the IGCSE and the IB. But today we are joined by Miss Brelsford again, and we're going to be talking about the first term of IB and potential career paths or university paths when we leave school. Good morning, Miss Brelsford.
Good morning, Chloe. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Happy to be here talking to you.
Yes, me too. Okay, so let's get straight into it. So, talking about going to uni and applying for uni, what are the practicalities? Because university is quite, a fairly long course, isn't it? And in many countries, it's by no means cheap to go to university. So how would you advise somebody who could possibly afford to go to university, but they're not sure how to start off and how they're going to live their life, maybe paying their debts afterwards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I love that you're focusing on the finances. I think we have found in the last 3 years of COVID that your passport countries, so where you can actually live around the world, so and where you can easily get a student visa, or potentially where you can stay after you've graduated from university. So your passport is really important, and then the financials are so important. COVID has hit lots of families hard, and we have families at BIS of all different financial means, right? And so, but almost every university decision will come down to how much it costs, and whether that's $10,000 or $70,000. That's still one of the most important conversations. But it also tends to be one of the last conversations that families have, because parents want the best for their kids. They just want kids to enjoy, to go where they want to go and to pursue their passions, or alternatively, they want their students to go to a very highly selective brand name university, because they believe that will equate to more opportunity afterwards. Yeah. And so in either way, it can put a lot of pressure on the students, but really being open and honest about finances, I'd say is the beginning point of any conversation about university. Yeah. I would really encourage parents to really think in advance and put a budget together, have a conversation with your student as early as possible. Because yes, it may seem a few years away, but you've got to pay for university for 3 to 4 years. And then, like we said, going back to where you can get a student visa and what passport you hold, that also influences how much universities cost around the world. So if you're going to a country where you're an international student, that's going to cost more for you. Yeah. If you have a passport of a country where you can get home fee status, great. Yeah. Different countries have different rules around home fees. Yeah. And if you're a resident in certain states in the US, that's different depending on the state. So there really are lots of differences depending on your passport. So your passport and your finances, I'd say, are the sort of starting blocks of your university search.
Definitely. And I think it's really not something to be shy about. This is quite an expensive affair in some cases, and you need to get your priorities, and there's not really a lot of point in looking at a university if you know that you don't have the means to pay for it. So start looking at that early on, and then you can really narrow down your choices and still find something that's suitable for you.
Absolutely. I think there are so many universities in the world. Our students around the world tend to apply to the same sort of, 50 to 100 universities, but there are thousands of them. And so I'm never really concerned that a student is not going to find a university for them and have a great experience, but you do have to come at that approach with an open mind. Right. And again, talking about the finances, if you are a family that's looking for a scholarship or some kind of financial aid, that's also another. That in itself is a separate application for university. So you've not only are you going to be doing all your research about the university you want to go to, filling out the application for that, writing the essays. Usually the financial side of that, or the scholarship side of that, is an additional amount of work. So again, starting early is really, really important.
Yeah. So you're talking about a financial aid, and when we have that, does that mean that we're taking a loan out? Or does that mean that the university is lending the money to us? Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so again, there are lots of different ways to get financial assistance from universities, and it will be different all over the world, and because of your passport or your residency.
Of course.
Some universities will give loans that you will have to pay back.
Yeah.
That's usually only to residents of that country, though. So actually very few of our students do that because they don't have access to those benefits because they haven't been paying tax in that country, for example, because they've been living in Phuket. Then you can get sort of grants and scholarships that don't have to be paid back, but they might be completely sort of no strings attached. You just have to keep up a specific like grade point average, or it's because of your sport, or another talent, music or something, for example. So as long as you're playing that sport or doing that music, you keep up your scholarship. For some financial aid that you wouldn't need to pay back necessarily, but you will have to prove your family's financial status. And so that in itself, can be pretty invasive. They want to know your bank details, where your parents work, how much you have in savings, any property you own, even the kind of car you drive. So that can be, those are for, families that really require that financial aid. They have to make sure that they check that, they're really needy of that money. Yeah.
And we can just be mindful that this is one path to go on after school. But some people might think that, they've been in education all their lives and it's time for something different and it's time to put their skills to practice. So what about after the IB? What if we just want to start work straight away? I know plenty of people who do.
Yeah, and so what have you seen some of your peers do in the past?
Well, I've seen plenty of them go to university, but I've seen also plenty of them go straight into work, get an internship. Like one of my friend's sisters, she actually got a bank internship, and that was after she went to university. But there are plenty of things that don't require university diplomas at all.
Degrees.
Yeah. Thank you. Degrees at all. And you can start your training for a particular workforce, and I think it's really something to think about, because it doesn't always have to be that you do the school, you go to university, and then you get a job. You could even mix those things around, or start your job after school and then go to university or something like that. Right?
Yeah, you absolutely can. There are lots of different pathways, and students at our school, the majority of them do go straight into university. But even those ones that do, some of them change university courses. They might, stop studying for a little while and then come back to it. We also have students who join the military. So, for some passport holders, Korean or Singapore, it's compulsory that they go straight into the military. Others choose to join. We've had students join the military in the UK or in Australia.
Yeah.
So that's an option. Yes, some students just go straight into work. So if they are a Thai citizen and they can work in Thailand, there's not really anything stopping them from getting a job right out of BISP.
Yeah.
For some of our other students, because we're international, again, it comes down to that visa. So not many of our international students can work in Thailand because there are visa restrictions about that. So then you would go back potentially to your home country and where you can work and get a visa. Yeah. I was working with a student recently who, after BISP, moved back to the UK, has been working for 3 years. She, arrived back in London, got a job in a pub, realized that she really, really loved working in hospitality. And now, just last year, applied to university, got in. So it was about 3 or 4 years after she actually graduated, but now she really figured out that that's what she wants to do. And so she's gone into events management.
Okay.
So yeah, there are lots of options, but again, because we're an international community and we're some people are sort of a little bit stateless or homeless. I know that I am, I live in Phuket, but I have a British passport. And so for most places around the world, I need a visa to work, right? And so it's exactly the same if you're an 18-year-old BISP graduate. So it really just depends where you can work.
Yeah. And it's not really an all or nothing affair, is it? Because you can go to university and then you can get a part-time job. And I think that would really interest me, because I do want to go to university. But also I think having a job gives a sense of independence, and you're earning your own money, which you can decide how to spend it. And so I don't think it's really university or work. I think you can mix the two.
Yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah. And just as you can also mix playing your sport for a club and studying too, so you could it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. Also now with everything being a little bit more accessible online, I think universities are becoming more accessible in different ways to different kinds of learners, which is really cool. The thing to think about studying and working. So you, for example, if you went back to the UK, that would be pretty easy for you to do. You have a British passport, you could work there, right? If you were an international student in the US, there's a restriction on how many hours you can work. And a lot of the time it has to be in a job on campus. So some countries around the world will have stipulations like that. I was at university in Canada, and at the time I could only get a job on campus, and it had to be for, I think it was 10 hours a week. That was all I could work. But there are usually loads of jobs on campus, because there's lots of food outlets and college pubs or the library or the bookstore. So it really is geared up so that students can get jobs. But it's just to be aware of that some countries will have restrictions on that.
Yeah, sure. So moral of the story, do your research on that country, guys. Okay, so going back in time, when we are applying to university and we're putting our applications forward, then what's the time frame of this? And how do we organize ourselves, finding the right universities and deciding who we can put our applications forward to?
So it will start, like I said, around about now. So after we, and I say we, the university counsellors, have finished with our IB subject selections with the year 11s, our attention then moves to the year 12s. And so you very shortly, I think you've already just been, as a year 12, Chloe, you've just been set up on Unifrog, our new university search platform, which is really cool. So you're already starting a little bit to chip away at that. And then what happens next is we do student-led meetings. Conferences, exactly. And so really your counselor will help you prepare for that. And it's your opportunity as the student to kind of present to your parents what your plan is. And so it gives you a little bit of ownership of that. You will have had a conversation with them in advance. For example, what's our budget, things like that. But it's putting you in the driver's seat to really start that process and take ownership of that journey. The counselors are there to support you every step of the way, but the more that you do for yourself, the more invested you're going to be in it, and then ultimately the better decision you're going to make, because you would have done your research and you would have really figured out what you liked and what you didn't like. In terms of starting that research, we talked about geography and where you have a passport and money. That's a really good place to start. And so your budget might determine where you can go, and your passport country might determine where you can go. So maybe you just start your research on a specific country. Maybe you kind of have an idea of what you want to study. So maybe that you want to study theatre and art, and that London, for example, has some really great drama schools, and so maybe that's your absolute focus. So you narrow it down to where the best place for your subject is. Maybe you want to do engineering, and that you want to get a German education in engineering, and so you can you can do it that way. What is really cool about Unifrog, though, is that they have these amazing libraries of subjects and careers. And so you can do it either way. You can think, maybe in the future, I know that I kind of want to do something with marine biology. So you can look it up in there, and then it will narrow it down and down and down. And then it will actually recommend universities for you in different countries that you might want to look at. So it's really cool when you get into that. The same with the subjects. You can put in your 3 higher level IB subjects, and it will recommend university subjects that you might want to study.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So you put it in, and then you can can also put in your sort of the grades that you think you're going to get, so your total IB score. So it will recommend universities that might be a reach. So say you are predicted, or you think you're going to get about 35 IB points, which at the moment is our average, then they might suggest universities that are 38, 37. So ones you'd be striving for, then they would have a list of ones that are right on that 35 dot. And so you know that those are, pretty good chance of you getting in. And then they'll have ones that are safe ones.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we usually suggest that students apply to sort of at least one in each group, so that you've got, potentially a backup if you need it.
Yeah.
And then it's always good to strive, for a higher one at the same time.
Yeah. And I was with Miss Nolan Jackson the other day, who is a colleague of Miss Brelsford, and she helps advise on subject selection and university application. And we were making a spreadsheet because we went on the Unifrog site, and I made a university shortlist.
Yeah.
So you choose a continent, you'd say, and you put in your high-level subjects or what you're interested in. And then it's amazing how they just, bring out all of these, narrowed down specially for you. And sorry, back to the spreadsheet. I had about 6 or 7 factors that I wanted to take into account in choosing this university shortlist. And some of them were, of course, finances and the environment, language spoken, and of course the university course. And it really helped to just narrow things down. And then I put some of those universities from the shortlist under those, and then filled in the according finance, environment. And I think that really helps, clear your head, and to just apply what you've seen and then write it down, I think can help you establish a list. So I would really recommend any IB students to give that a go. And as soon as you enter year 12, you'll be given a Unifrog account. Is that right?
Yeah. In fact, the year 9s have it now. This is our first year of using Unifrog. And so you as a year 12 now have just got it because it's new, but the years behind you are already starting to get more established on it. Yeah.
Well, it's a great way of organizing yourself. I really recommend it.
And parents aren't on it just yet, but parents can access it through their students' accounts.
Okay.
And I love what you were saying about a spreadsheet. This is where I can get a little bit geeky about, the university application process.
Yeah.
Like, nothing is easier than just looking at a student spreadsheet. And like you said, you take all of that information that you're finding from the websites, or from Unifrog, or from conversations with a friend, or whatever it is, and you have each column on your spreadsheet is one of those desirables, like you said, like language spoken, environment, one of those. And then you have your list of universities, and then you can just compare and contrast. Like, this is, this one compared to this one is too expensive. This program's a 3-year program. This is a 4-year program. You can even on some websites find out like some of the minute detail, ratio of males to females in your computer science class, or the amount of students that graduate in 3 years, or the amount of students that graduate in 5 years, the cost of accommodation. Can you live on campus? Do you have to commute? Are you allowed, are freshmen, first-year students allowed to drive their cars onto campus? Sometimes they're not, because there's only a finite amount of parking spaces.
Right.
Is there public transport in that university town? Is it close to an airport? For our international students, they need to be able to get out and get back to their families quickly. So there's so many factors that can be important, and laying it all out on a spreadsheet is really the best way to keep track of it.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, the grades that we receive in the IB are a big factor in how we're going to get admitted into these universities. So, I believe this can differ from nation to nation and from continent to continent.
And from university to university.
Yeah, of course. It's a bit difficult, but when we do our research, it's all right. But how do the different universities look at our grades, just generally?
Yeah, so people are gonna be bored of me saying like it really depends. That's sort of like the tagline of a university counselor, because BISP students in the past 4 years have applied to like 22 different countries or something. Like we have students in universities all over the world. And that's really unusual for a school of our size. I think it's what really makes our population, our community unique. And I love that. Just when I think that I've seen it all, I'll have a student come in and say, I want to go to university in Iceland. Yesterday, someone said that to me. I was like, okay, tell me about universities in Iceland. I didn't know anything. So it's really diverse. And so a question like that, how do they look at your grades, is really dependent. Mm-hmm. I guess the big ones are that they will look at your transcript, which is the document that you will get when you graduate that has your grades from year 10 to year 13. And that's every mid-year grade and every end-of-year grade. So 2, 4, 6, 8 sets of grades. Remember that you're applying in the middle of year 13, so you won't have your final set of grades yet. But really, they're looking at all of those grades being consistent or getting progressively better. They don't all have to be A's and A stars. There's universities for students of all academic levels. So it doesn't really matter, what they are like, but it's nice to see consistency. Universities might flag up, they have a 2 in that subject, but everything else is a 7. And so that might look a bit strange. So some universities look a lot at the transcript and they look at how you've done over your all 4 years of high school. Okay. Some universities just look at, in Thailand, for example, they look at the grade point average of all of those grades. So it's just that final out of 4, are they a 2.4 student or are they a 3.6 student? Okay. The UK looks very much at your IG and your IB final grades. So they don't care so much how you've done internally in school. They're looking at those final exams. Okay. And so you'll hear a lot about IB predicted grades. You have to submit those with your UCAS application. And then you only find out your actual acceptances once you've got your final IB grades. So it's a lot of a later process. Whereas in the US, Canada, you will find out whether you have got in or not before you've even written your IB exams. Okay. Yeah. Not to say you can blow off your IB exams. They're still looking at them to make sure that you finish high school on a high. But those actual exam results aren't as important in that case. So it really is dependent. But I'd say those are the 2 big things. So either looking at the whole transcript as a whole or looking at the final exam results. And you might be applying to universities that do both of that. So really the message is just to be as consistent as you can. Yeah. Just keep that effort up throughout the school year, but not to the point where, you're overloaded. Do as much as you can in the time, but still enjoy, extracurricular, leisure, and spending time with friends and family. Exactly. Because like I keep saying, not every student needs to be an A-star student. You know, there are universities for everybody out there. Yeah. Or parts if you don't want to do university, like we've talked about. Yeah, good point. Yeah. So, with regards to, the pandemic situation, how could we meet these universities without leaving our campus? That's a really good question. We were really lucky here for so long to have massive university fairs. They were so much fun. Yeah, they were so fun. And for someone, I love to plan events. So I loved planning them. Just that energy you got from, we would have 100 university reps here from all over the world. And then we'd have about, upwards of 400 students from all over the island coming. It was such a buzz. It was, yeah. Anyway, we won't dwell on the fact that we don't have that right now, but it is an unfortunate opportunity. But you experienced one of those university fairs online, didn't you? What did you think about that? In person, actually. Yeah, so you've done both now. So do you think that there's a place for university fairs? Did you still find them useful even though they were virtual? I did. Of course, I think nothing can really replace that feeling of contact to contact. But I was really surprised by the virtual fair and the fact that it was still really engaging and fun. So how it worked was there was a virtual table and then you'd have about 6 or maybe 8 spaces, and then you enter the meet, if you like, the video link, and then there's a university representative answering your questions, debriefing a little bit about the university, and then there would be other students on their camera calls as well. And it surprisingly felt, quite a bit like person-to-person contact. And it was really fun, and I got a lot of questions answered because I think
because maybe people are put off by the technology or that it's not in person anymore, there weren't a lot of people entering. So I actually got to talk to some university representatives one-on-one, and I could just ask them exactly what I wanted to know. And I got a lot from it. So, yeah.
Well, that's really awesome to hear. And yeah, sometimes when it's in person, that table of like popular universities is so crowded with other students that you don't get to get in there. And so I love that you had that one-on-one experience. Yeah, so there are virtual university fairs where lots of universities come together in one spot. But the universities are desperate to speak to students, you know, because they're not getting to travel. There are university reps who spend months and months traveling around the world meeting students. So if you are interested in a university, literally just email them and say, hey, would you like a chat? You know, it can be that easy. But also on their websites, there will be lots and lots of ways of getting in contact. So I love looking at their social media sites. You know, you can follow them all on Instagram, see what's happening. YouTube, they've all got so many videos and things now on YouTube. You can get a real feel of it. Another thing that I really love is you can do virtual tours of the campuses, because now we can't go and visit campuses. I've done it with actual 3D glasses that we have at school, and it's like you're in it. And that's really fun to do. Yeah, like
tour.
Exactly. And so if you really want to get, you know, really get on that campus without being able to visit, like that is one way you can do it. We try to share a lot of the information about all the events that are happening virtually, but there really are so many of them now. That's sort of one of the disadvantages of not having that one-off fair where everyone comes together, is there's lots of little fairs around, so it can feel really overwhelming. But again, if you're talking to your university council and if you've got your list, if I get an email, for example, from, I don't know, the University of Waterloo in Canada, and I know that that's on your list, I can be like, oh, Chloe, just ping you the email and say, hey, I got this from Waterloo. There you go. So the more that you are building up your list and communicating with your counselor, then they can help you to access any information you need.
Awesome. And so, you know, what would you want the listeners to take away from this? Because we've covered so many topics, you know, we've said university or not university, you know, we've kind of done most situations possible, but what would you want every listener to take away from this? Maybe a mantra or a final tip, a word of advice?
I want students to know that there's really no right or wrong path. We are happy to support you and your family on whatever that path may be. I want students to know that they can come to these conversations with their university counselors without judgment. So whether you need $70,000 worth of financial aid or whether you can pay for the whole thing yourself, like that's absolutely fine. I don't want finances to ever be an awkward place. You know, we've spoken to everyone. We've lots of students throughout the time. So yes, finances is so important. So that would be something to really take away for any family listening to this, is like have that conversation sooner rather than later.
Okay.
And then thirdly is don't put it off. There is absolutely no reason why you can't start, you know, some of your IB work, so your EE or, you know, just your planning, your TOK or your university applications early. You know, year 12, once you've got settled into your IB classes, you've got plenty of time to, and it doesn't feel like you do, but compared to year 13, you have plenty of time to start stuff. So start early. Don't, you know, stick your head in the ground and think, oh, I'll do it later, because there is no later. It just will keep building up, like you said. Yeah,
there is no later.
Yeah. So I guess those three things. So everybody is different. Everyone's path is their path. Don't compare yourself to others, and know that you can come to the counselors and we'll help you with whatever you need to do. Talk about your finances, start early. And I guess actually to add on to that, communicate. Like your counselors are here to help you, and we cannot help you if you don't talk to us.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Brelsford. I really definitely learned something today, and needless to say, I think the listeners did too. So thank you.
Thank you, Chloe.
Thanks everybody for listening, and we hope to see you next time. Bye for now.